In the Persona series, the wildcard is an ability as well as a term used to describe those with the power to freely swap between different personas in battle. Much like stands in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, personas are typically limited to one per user, so you won't see too many people walking around swapping personas on a whim, let alone those who can summon one in the first place. That is what makes our mainline protagonists so special, since they hold this potential to wield almost any one of their choosing, whilst everyone else around them can only summon a single persona unique to them. Over the course of Persona history, there have been quite a few wildcards, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't make them any less special, but remember when they weren't? Remember when everyone could switch personas? What up? It's your boy Momo, the I beat Persona 5 using only Mara janitor, and today we're going to be talking about the wildcard ability from the Persona series and how its introduction drastically changed the direction, and by proxy, the future of these games. If you enjoy, why not give the video a thumbs up, as it really helps the channel out, and consider subscribing for more videos like this all the time, cause we're going to keep the content you love so much coming. But I won't hold you too long. You clicked on 6 dumb faces, let's get right into it. So, I'm sure you know what a persona is, but I just want to touch on that really quickly before we go jumping into the creme de la creme that is wildcard. Plus, the information is all pertinent to the overall subject. As described by Igor, a persona is the manifestation of one's psyche, or simply the side of you that shows itself when you face the world. Personas aren't purely psychological though. There's a sociological aspect to them as well, given the fact that their power is tied to the relationships that its user forms, as seen with the confidant-based evolutions in P4 and 5. In addition, every persona is tied to a specific arcana, which are based on the different classes of tarot cards. Given this information, it's important to know that a user in their awakened persona will always share an arcana, awakened meaning their original persona. And the full arcana is one that's generally reserved for our hero and wildcard users, though there are some exceptions. This is because the Fool, as Elizabeth tells us, is the number 0, the void from which all things begin, which essentially means that there is an infinite level of potential. But it isn't the Fool arcana that allows one to freely swap personas, rather the ability known as the wildcard. The Fool and wildcard are typically synonymous, but again, there are those like Akechi who are not of the Fool arcana but possess a wildcard. The best way I can describe it is that all fools have the wildcard, but not everyone with the wildcard are fools, if that makes any sense. The concept of the Fool being the wildcard has been around since Persona 3 and has served as the building blocks whenever a new protagonist is introduced. They are completely blank slates for the player to self-insert into, excluding Beep Boop of course, which is supposed to mirror the infinite potential of their arcana and allow you to utilize any persona you so choose. Since personas are a representation of your inner self, their appearance and capabilities tend to reflect that, matching its user's disposition, as well as their inner and outer perception of themselves. Given that the protagonist has so many personas of different arcanas, and they, of course, need to level them up not only through battle, but also through socializing and building a relationship with an individual of that arcana out in the real world. This makes the social aspect of personas just as important as the psychological piece, and to a certain extent, maybe even more so. But this wasn't always the case for the series. And this single decision fundamentally changed the way that the series works, right down to the core gameplay loop and story of each entry. Revelations Persona, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment are fundamentally different games from Persona 3 and onward. This comes down to the introduction of the wildcard, and by extension, its partnering mechanic, social links. Before the wildcard, each persona was stated to be just one of a person's countless selves, and each summoning, whether it be demon or god, is another self within you. So anyone, so long as they had the power to summon a persona, could potentially have a number of them at their beck and call. This is in stark contrast to the later entries where, as we went over, only 1 or 2 people can have this ability per entry, and they're shown to be the strongest individuals around. Now, there's definitely a few reasons for a change like this, and that's going to come down to gameplay mainly. As the series slowly moved away from its dungeon crawling JRPG roots, it found its niche as a dating/social life sim that moonlights as a JRPG with turn-based gameplay and tighter, story-heavy dungeons. The purpose for the social life aspect is all due to how the wildcard mechanic works, since it hinges on your relationship building. As Igor puts it, the ability evolves as you develop your emotional ties with others. The stronger your social links, the more powerful your persona ability. And that's a major contrast to how it's always been with the 3 previous entries. A persona's strength and evolution are now heavily tied to its user's character development, whereas it was once dependent on very JRPG elements like combining special items with a persona to unlock its ultimate form. While these items needed to evolve their ability are only obtained through some minor form of character development in Persona 2 Duology, it's nowhere near as relevant nor prevalent as it becomes in later entries, nor is it the actual development itself that evolves the persona. But as you can tell, relationship building has become the single biggest focus in these games. Whether or not the change is better doesn't really matter much to this video, but there's no denying that the mainstream Persona games are Persona 4 Golden and even more so Persona 5. It also doesn't help that Atlus won't re-release the other games. I had to buy a stupid PS Classic just to play the localized version of Persona. And he has red hair. Why? And what happened to Mark? Atlus, what are you doing? But I've seen plenty of people online just absolutely begging for remakes or even proper ports of these classics. Many others just want to experience the series' roots, back when everyone in your party had the not so unusual talent of swapping personas mid-battle, or they could enter the Velvet Room, interact with Igor. I've even had conversations with a good number of people who actually want the wildcard mechanic to retire, or at least be revamped, so that it can allow for more player creativity when building a party. More times than not, you pick your favorite party members who have the strongest stats, and then you throw them in and you stick with them for the rest of the game unless somebody better shows up. Or unless you're a psycho like me and just do a Joker and Ryuji only run. Granted, the formula used for the most recent entries are what separates the series from every other JRPG out there, but to say that they're actively distancing themselves from their roots is an understatement. Sure, the series is most certainly a lot more user-friendly and a lot easier to jump into, but that doesn't mean that we have to do the same thing over and over and over again just because it works. Fans deserve more, and fans also deserve to be able to experience every Persona game under the sun because they're all just that good. This is like one of the only series where I don't dislike any game in the continuity. The mainline continuity anyway. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Honestly, shame on Atlus for making these games so inaccessible. Shame on them. Shame. But yeah, that's the wild card. This one was a bit of an interesting topic to cover, seeing how changing one tiny aspect of the mechanics, and by extension any other mechanics tied to it, drastically alters the entire genre of this series. I personally am a fan of both the older games and newer ones for many different reasons, so whichever route they end up taking for the next mainline Persona, I'm sure I'll be happy. But I know a lot of people are looking for them to mix up the formula by this point, cause they're sick of being a high school transfer student with terrible parents. But if you enjoyed, consider giving the video a thumbs up since it really helps the channel out. Also, smack that subscribe button while you're at it so that you never miss another video here from your favorite janitor again. Also, why don't you let me know down below what you think about the wildcard mechanic? And let me know whether or not you'd like to see your party members be able to swap personas as well in the future, because that would most certainly mix up the gameplay loop drastically. But I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Holla!